It's another Waterproof Records. Thank you for joining me once again. And yes, it's a guest episode. These are always so exciting because, when you're just stuck with me talking to you, I kind of know where I'm going to go. But when I have somebody on the show, anything is possible, right? It could be the most controversial podcast of all time. We never know. This could be the one where I get canceled, you guys. I'm just kidding. So I'm excited to welcome somebody that if you follow me on social media, you no doubt know who this is because we've collaborated a couple times now. We're becoming the best of friends. The only thing that separates us are many, many miles between our cities. But he has become a good friend of mine. He's a music wizard. And we're about to do a show with Mr. Patrick Hicks. But first, we're going to start out with a theme song. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
All right, you guys, before we kick things off, we're going to give a shout out to the sponsor of Waterproof Records. That is DistroKid. You've heard me talk about it before, but you're going to hear me talk about it again. And you know that you can get 30% off for your first year of using DistroKid. What is DistroKid? It is the way for you to get your music on the air. On the air. That's kind of an old school term, but you know what I mean. Spotify, iTunes, Deezer, isn't that one of them? Tidal. There's all these music platforms, but everybody knows the heavy hitters. But if you want to release independent music, you need to be reaching out and using DistroKid. It's so easy. If you've got songs, you got beats, you got jams, and you want the world to hear them, this is your source. And if you click on my VIP link, which is in all the profiles of everything I have, you get 30% off. It's just distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. I use them. I plan on using them for many years to come. And it's the best way that you can get your music out there fast and easy. So make sure you check out DistroKid, follow the link, and get that 30% off. But now, the moment you've been waiting for, you saw the name of the episode. You saw Patrick Hicks. You were like, what? I'm going to learn so much on this episode. I'm going to literally walk away with my head exploding full of data about music and songs and everything, because that's what Patrick does. So I am going to welcome to Waterproof Records right now. Let's talk to Patrick Hicks.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for having me on. I love that intro, Music Wizard. I'm going to have to start using that.
You need to put it on business cards, dude. It needs to say Patrick Hicks, Music Wizard.
Yeah, I never knew what to call myself.
There you go.
When I first started doing this, because I'm like just some guy, and everybody's like, "Are you a music historian? Are you in the music business? Are you a musician?" Nope. So I like music storyteller, music celebrator, but music wizard might be the new one.
What I love right now for the people who only listen to the show and not watch the show, he's got a pumpkin shirt on and I've got a pumpkin shirt on. Was that in honor of me?
Yes, but also in honor of the topic of the podcast. Yeah.
Oh, good. I am excited. I love that Patrick. All your stuff says Patrick Hicks Music Stories, and that is what it says when you follow him on social media. And if you don't follow him on social media, what are you doing? You have to go check him out. It's your handle is just on TikTok. What is it? Just Patrick Hicks?
It's at Patrick Hicks 82. Because I think when I first signed up for TikTok, Patrick Hicks was taken, so I threw my birth year on there.
Yeah.
And I was not thinking when I signed up for TikTok that I was going to make TikToks, so I didn't put that much thought into it. So now I'm trying to go with the Patrick Hicks Music Stories as the brand. So that's what it is on Instagram. But
yeah, I had the same problem with mine when I signed up. Somebody else had beat me to the punch with Jacob Gibbons, so I just threw the in front of it. And I've had people be like, I've had people who go like, ooh, the, and I'm like, well, but you're forever bound now to your age. You gotta, now they see the 82, they know how old you are. You can't hide it, right?
I know. Well, I did a series that was all about, me turning 40 this year, so I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah, me neither. I know it's different for guys. We don't have the tendency to worry about our age. I live in the old LA, and so every lady you meet out here is like, I'll never tell, and guys are like, I don't care. I'll say say how old I am. But yeah, I love the terms that we have for what it is that we do, because people always ask me as well about the music thing, and it's fun to just kind of say, no, I'm not. I didn't go to school for this. I just am a music. We're both music lovers. And we made TikToks, and then we found ourselves one day doing them all the time with a larger and larger audience. What got you started? What was your TikTok origin story? This is a Marvel film.
Sure. So this is not kissing up to you at all. This is well documented that you are the reason I started TikTok, or one of them. You and my wife, I think, share co-credit, the mother and father of Patrick Hicks music stories.
I'll share gladly with your wife. I'll share gladly.
So I've always just, been doing creative things. Like I studied improv at Second City. I've written screenplays. I was in bands like years and years ago. I'm just always that kind of person that's like, I can't just be a guy at a job. I have to be doing something creative. And I was kind of looking for the next thing to do. I was working on the screenplay and was kind of stalled. And my wife is like a big believer in 30-day challenges. Like, do something for 30 days. Like, write a book for 30 days. And at the end, like, maybe you don't have a good book, but like you have completed something. And she did her own project where she learned everything about NFTs. She's like, I don't know anything about this world. It seems to be inhabited with like douche bros. Let me learn everything about it. Let me make my own NFT and like learn how to sell it and put it up on OpenSea. And she did all this stuff with NFTs. And it was really cool. And then she's like, all right, what are you going to do? And I was like, maybe I will make TikToks. And she was like, you're going to make TikTok content? I was like, yeah, why not? She's like, what are you going to do on there? And I was like, I have skills. I have knowledge. I could do something. And I mostly use TikTok for like cooking videos. I think most of the people I was subscribed to before I started were cooking videos. But the one person I followed that was a music person was Jacob Givens. And I was this guy does music. He looks like he's around my age. He does these awesome videos where he's reacting to like songs from the 90s. And we had actually, my wife and I shared your videos back and forth like all the time. Like when we saw the Smashing Pumpkins one. I think the first one we ever saw was the Temple of the Dog video, where you're actually like, it cuts to you being around the fire. And my wife was like, look, this guy like totally recreated that video, because we're huge fans of that song. And so I was like, all right, this guy's out there doing music content. He's got a lot of followers. People are watching it. I'm going to do music content. And so it just started off like, let me just tell some stories that I know about music that I enjoy. And then, and it was going to be for 30 days. And let's see what happens. And then maybe like my fifth video got like 10,000 views or something, which seemed insane. Like,
totally.
We're telling everybody we know, like 10,000 people watched me tell a story about Bob Dylan. Like, what is going on? This is weird. And then it just kept snowballing. And I think pretty early on you followed me, and I was like, this is going to sound weird, but you are the reason I make TikTok. And and then, yeah, we met in person, became friends. I've met like so many cool people through this and gotten cool opportunities, and it's just super fun. And that was the whole thing. It was like, okay, after 30 days, let's check in. And now after every month, I kind of check in. I check in with my wife because she has to deal with a lot of the sacrifices we make to be able to do this content.
Of course.
Every month we check in, like, is it still fun? Is it still worth it? And yeah, I love telling stories. I love like the feedback I get from people. So it just, I don't see myself quitting anytime soon. And I'm hoping to like try to make this something full time. Because it's way more fun than my real job.
It's a blast, and I'm doing the same thing. I love that story, and I got a chance to hear it. And apparently, by the way, not only are we good friends and we love working on stuff together, but apparently we're twins, according to the comments after our collaboration video. There were so many people who were like, I thought it was the same guy, like back and forth, which I thought was so amazing. I was like, I look at you and you look at me, and I go, I don't think, other than that we're white dudes with beards, I think that maybe that's about as similar as we get. But it's just really funny when people say like, oh yeah, I just thought it was the same guy, like back and forth, I think,
in the first collaboration, some people were like, something like, oh, is Jacob wearing a wig or something? There was something implying like it was better to have hair, and I was like,
right,
no,
this jerks.
The real one is the bald one. That's the real look.
That's the real guy. It's a real guy. But it's great. If people who are listening haven't seen our first collaboration, it was the Foo Fighters. Patrick and I don't live in the same city, but you grew up in Southern California, correct? Where are you from originally?
Yeah, we have this weird crossing of paths. So I grew up in Anaheim, California. I moved out to Illinois for school in 2010, and then I moved to Chicago in 2013. Married a Chicago girl, have Chicago kids, so I'm kind of stuck here. But I'm originally from California. And then didn't you go to school in Illinois, but then now live in California? I did. We have the Oregon Trail, you're crossing paths in the covered wagons. I am originally from Oklahoma, but I moved to Illinois at the end of high school and went to college out there, and I married a Chicago girl. And we came to California, and so we've been here ever since. But her family's there, so I've got some California boys with a Chicago girl. But yeah, I think that's pretty great that we have that connection as well. But you let me know that you were coming through town, and we knew we had to do something together. And we were listing off a bunch of stuff, and you had done some topics, I had done a bunch of videos, and so we were trying to figure out what would be a good one. And then when you threw out Foo Fighters, I was like, man, I've been meaning to get to that one. That was one I wanted to do. Same. And we had a short window of time. We got to have lunch together, and we filmed it in the car. And it was fun. We whipped it together fast, and I really am proud of that. I think it turned out perfectly, and it had a great response, and people were so excited, the ones who knew you and knew me, to see us come together, which was great. No, it was super cool. We also happen to own the same shirt. I saw you wearing it in a video, and I was like, hey, I have that shirt. Let's wear it for this video.
Yes, I remember you said, I have that one too, and I was like, yes. And so there we were at lunch, both wearing the same shirt, which was just even better too. But yeah, it was awesome. And then since then, we've had these great videos that we make with Allison Hagendorf. Sorry, I always say her last name wrong. But and people are begging me. They're like, this should be a show.
Right, we need more. Yeah,
more. I know. And then they're saying, like, this one guy was like, this should be like this special, like, you're the Patreon subscriber of these guys. Like, you get this show and I was like, I may need to talk about the team and see what we can do. This is like a special treat, right? Because everybody's like,
do you have a Patreon?
I don't. I actually, early on, I had considered doing it. And then I heard all these horror stories of like guys that had millions of followers and they couldn't get, support and subscribership. And I think early on I learned that it's really hard to translate entertaining somebody on an app and then getting them to pay. You almost have to.
It's a big ask.
It's a big ask because people are like, look, I like scrolling. I like liking and clicking the button and commenting on your videos. But I think that's where our relationship ends. And you're like, that's fine. I get it.
Sure.
And so I knew I wanted to do something when I felt like I had something to offer that they couldn't get for free. And I don't quite know what that is yet. Probably me dancing. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll pay for that.
Yeah, baby. But I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time, and I was excited when we were able to pull it off. And we were supposed to do it last week, and then of course technical problems on my end. But here we are, and I don't know, man. Like before we dig into albums, I was gonna say, what do you want to happen the most? I think from all of this, like what do you see for yourself in the next year or two? Coming from, we talk about this replacing our current jobs, and I think that's always something that I think about. And I was just curious as to what you visualize for yourself.
I mean, it's weird, like that never would have crossed my mind when I first started doing this. I never even would have thought about that. But the longer it keeps going and like things keep happening, like I've done a paid sponsorship video and I've gotten artists that I really like that follow me or that have commented on videos and people saying like, you got to do something else. It kind of puts the idea in your mind like, oh, maybe I should be doing this. And just like the messages you get of people being like, I learned so much from you, or like so even some people like, you got me through a hard time watching your videos, stuff like that. Like, it's so much more fulfilling than what I do for like a 9-to-5 job. And it's weird, but there is this kind of, I think, stigma against content creators. Like, I've seen threads on Twitter and stuff where it's like, it's almost like, how dare you think that you could get paid for doing this? Like, what an entitled attitude to think you should get paid for this. But it's like, they're like, if you want money, go get a real job. It's like, I have a real job, and what I do on TikTok is so much more valuable for society. Like, I'm over here processing TPS reports and by day and at night, like, impacting people's lives legitimately. Why do I get paid for one and not for the other? It's so weird. But it is a big ask to be like, oh, I've given you all this stuff for free. Now, I get paid for it. So I don't know what the solution is. I'd love to have a TV show. I've got some ideas for how, all I do is tell stories. So storytelling is going to translate to TV shows, or I'd love to do like a documentary. I actually think I might do that this year, just like make a documentary on my own, record it on my phone, just do it like DIY style.
Yeah.
Just, for a new challenge. And I'm also working on a book. That's another thing, people have asked for. Not a ton of money in books either, but that's always been like a lifelong goal of mine to be a published author. So that's the hope. Book, TV show, who knows?
Same. And I love it. And I everything you're saying translates so clearly to me as well, because the greatest joy of all of this are those messages that you get from people that say, this means so much to me. Thank you.
Right.
And it really does outshine all of the, the stupid trolley comments and the things that we get that aren't that great. I'm going through one right now where it's kind of making me go insane. I made this dumb video, and just, it does, time after time after time, you get these things that you go, but then you get the messages that really echo in your mind about how it means something. And I love that you said TPS reports. Great Office Space reference there.
I did that. I said that in a live the other day, because people always ask me, like, what do you do for a living? And, I don't want to say what my real job is.
Sure.
I mean, also, it's just boring. Like, you wouldn't even care if I told you.
Right.
So I made that reference, like, it's Office Space, TPS reports, and, like, the chat flooded with quotes from the movie. So I'm going to start saying that from now on. And that's what I do.
It's a great way of filling it in, because as soon as, for people who know it, as soon as you say TPS reports, you are given a visual image of that repetitive day job in the cubicles, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I know the environment you're in. And I'm the same way. It's tough to make a living out of it, but I know that if we're patient, and this is pep talk Jacob here for us both, which is, I know that what's happening is, outside of what we're doing and making in the content that's free, people are acknowledging that there's value in it, that are in positions to make things happen. And I think that that's pretty exciting. So
for sure.
I know that if we keep after it, it's just a matter of time before a large enough group of people go like, I want to read, I want to watch, I want to consume just about anything this person does. And so that's pretty exciting. So I think there's going to be some really cool stuff on the horizon. It's just going to be trucking along and continuing to make videos and putting up with absurd responses from people and cherishing the kind words that happen along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I want to get into one of the core elements of Waterproof Records since I started was, I created the title. And long story short, for new people who haven't listened to old episodes of the show, or when I established it and you're just jumping in because Patrick, I named it Waterproof Records because my son was taking a bath as a kid, and he had a CDR and was dipping it in the water, and he thought that was a record. And we were joking about naming a record store that we were going to own together. And I said, what should we call the store? My son, who was only 3, said Waterproof Records. And I was like, oh, I love it. I was like, that is such a cool name. And then that was where I came up with this idea of unsinkable tunes from the past, present, and future as kind of the tagline. And and so I started thinking about there are albums and records and things that come into our lives and we are forever changed. And when I have musicians on the show that are in bands, I say, what was the one that you got, and then you had to play drums, or you had to play guitar, or you had to play bass, or whatever it was, Kay Hanley from Letters to Cleo is like, what was the album that like changed everything? And this question is hard for people because they're like, oh, there's so many.
Right. No, there's a lot.
I beg them to fixate on something that really, really landed at that time in your life and you'll always remember. And so when I asked you to be on the show, I was like, what was that album? And let me just tell the audience, I told him that 15 minutes before we were supposed to record the podcast last week, and then I couldn't do it. And he was kind of like, wow, you really threw me like a curveball before the show that I had to have that ready. So I'm glad you've had a week. Now that you've had a week, what is the album that you're bringing in here today?
The album I am bringing in is Notorious B.I.G's Ready to Die, his debut album, 1994 masterpiece. Let me tell you a little bit why I picked this one.
I want to know.
So you kind of gave me the pitch, and I've listened to episodes before, and usually you have on musicians, or at least people who
are currently pursuing it. Yeah.
Right. So usually it's like, what is the album that made you want to pick up an instrument? So I did pick up an instrument at one point in my life. Like I played guitar, but that's not why you're having me on. Like you're having me on because I'm like a music storyteller. So if I'm thinking about like what made me pick up a guitar and want to start a band, it is like the Smashing Pumpkins. So I wore this in honor, like Siamese Dream. When I first bought a guitar, the first thing I bought was the Siamese Dream guitar tablature book, which was all way over my head. It was way too hard for me. But like Smashing Pumpkins and Nirvana were like the two big bands that were like my big obsession bands that made me want to be in bands. But if I'm thinking about like, why do I do what I do now? Like tell stories about music. And especially on my channel, if anybody has watched my videos, they run the gamut of genre. So, I cover every genre that I can possibly find good stories in. So I've done country artists, I've done heavy metal, I've done alternative, I've done hip hop. And so the record that really made me fall in love with hip hop, and I think really expanded my mind towards different music, was this record. And, I had always liked hip hop. Like I grew up just watching MTV all day, as I kind of was, I went to a babysitter's house. I was plopped in front of the TV and I just watched whatever was on MTV. So I like in the 90s just soaked up whatever was on. So Nirvana was followed by TLC, was followed by Nine Inch Nails, was followed by like Snoop Dogg. And I was just like, I love all this stuff. But when I bought records, I started off buying like alternative stuff. That was like the music that felt like this is like my music. Nirvana is my band. Smashing Pumpkins, this is mine. And I didn't buy hip hop records, so I didn't have this album when it came out in 1994. It was like a hand me down from a family friend who knew that I loved music, and he gave me a cassette tape copy. Which I assume he probably bought his own copy on CD, so he's like, I don't need this anymore.
Right.
And he gave me this cassette copy, and it was the first hip hop album I'd ever listened to front to back. And it just blew me away in terms of like the storytelling and the cinematic aspects of it. I mean, Biggie is known for being like an incredible storyteller. Like you close your eyes, he's painting a sonic picture where you can envision everything that's going on. And I just had never really heard music like that. And when I think back, like, why do I tell musical stories? I mean, Nirvana like would reference in interviews, right? They'd be like, we love The Knack and we love Black Sabbath and we love Flipper, but they weren't singing songs like referencing those bands. And they weren't, although Smells Like Teen Spirit kind of sounds like Boston, it's not like over the literal More Than a Feeling riff, they were singing about how much Boston like meant to them or something. And with hip hop, so much is involved with paying respect to the past. And then it's a music that's like an ever evolving tradition. And that just made me want to like explore more. Like I love hearing a song like, Big Papa on this record. I'm like, what is this? What is underneath this? Where does this sound come from? And then I go back and find, the Isley Brothers Between the Sheets. And I was like, oh my God, like this opens me up to this whole other world of 70s soul and funk and all this stuff. And so if I just think like, why do I love music history and storytelling? Hip hop is a big part of it. And this album is kind of my intro into that world.
Yeah. Amazing.
I've talked for a long time. Sorry.
No, I was captivated. Because when you let me know that this was the album, and I'm going to take just a second to bring the audience up to speed on my end before we dig into it, in case they weren't aware of this, because you and I talked a little bit about it off the air. When we spoke earlier about you being from Southern California and me being originally from Oklahoma, one of the things I shared with you was growing up in the 1980s and into the 1990s. My teenage years were in the 90s in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My high school was as cliche as you could get. It was like a John Hughes movie. Cliche as in the Midwest, like something you'd see on the films, with like the social groups of the grunge kids, the jocks, the nerds. It was straight out of like, wow, somebody could come in here and be like, this is a movie high school. We had an obsession with football, very, very big football school. And my graduating class was 900 kids. All in all, it was close to 4,000 in my high school, so very large. And so for me, in my childhood, I wasn't very cool. I was a theater kid. I was very emotional, very expressive, and I found a lot of solace in alternative music and grunge music and rock music and metal and anything that was heavy, because I didn't play sports. So I didn't have any way to get that angst out. I didn't have a channel or a place for my aggressions to come out, and music was the place where I got that out of me. And theater, of course, would be a huge thing for me too, because acting and performance is another way to express yourself. But I really leaned on that music, and where I grew up, people who listen to hip hop and people who listen to country, people who listen to pop were different circles. And oftentimes the popular music was, those kids were the ones who picked on me. And so I was so dismissive of hip hop in the 90s as a teenager. And I say that to my audience so that you understand how little knowledge and experience I have coming into this, and why you never see stuff. And I've hinted on this before on the show, why you never see me talking about albums that are hip hop albums or major pop albums in my videos, because I have no nostalgic reference point for them. And while I hear them today, I go, wow, this is fantastic. This album is the perfect example of something that I feel a little bit of sadness that I was deprived of it.
Yeah.
Because I missed out. Because you want to talk about story and cinematic elements, what you just said. I was like, here's a guy who ended up screenwriting and writing, scripts for film and TV, also out here, and has wanted to write books, and was an English major, and, did all of that. Grew up, my mother is a teacher, and I grew up with English and stories, and that is a huge part of my life. And people have often described me as a storyteller, just like you. They've said like, well, Jacob's a storyteller. That's what he does. And I was listening to this album, and I was like, oh my God, because the one thing that I'm learning more and more as I dig deeper into hip hop is Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Smashing Pumpkins, all these bands that I was growing up with, metal bands, whatnot. Some of them might have had like a thematic album, especially in metal and that genre. But the way that this album is like having scenes, gunshots, dialogue, segues, lyrics where you literally are hearing what the protagonist is going through. There's dialogue. It's literally like a film with a soundtrack. And I was like, I think that if I had somehow been able to not have the experience that I did growing up, I probably would have been able to get into this and been like, wow, this is incredible. This is a masterpiece. And it really is a masterpiece. So...
No, I think so too. I mean, to be fair, I mean, if you just heard the singles on the radio, I think it doesn't give you the full picture of what this album is. And there's a reason for that, where we can get into that later maybe. But it's just, I mean, it starts off with like literally his birth, and then it's not just this autobiography of him as a person, and then the kind of the character that he plays on the record, but like of music too. So it starts off with like Curtis Mayfield playing, and like you hear the music like of the time period that he was born in, and then the evolution into like old school hip hop, and it's just from that first track, it's like, oh, we're going on like a journey here. And you're right, there's interludes, there's skits, and it's got everything you would want in a movie. I tend to think of it like sometimes, because I do have so many rock and roll friends, and I do have sometimes, separate circles. Like I have my punk rock friends who don't listen to the hip hop that I listen to. I have my hip hop friends that are like, this screaming is crazy. And I try to, tell the other groups like that there's good music in these different genres. And so for my rock friends that are like, I don't, it's violent or it's misogynistic or, it's materialistic. If you really listen to the great hip hop albums like Ready to Die, like so much of this is storytelling, and he's like Christopher Wallace, the Notorious B.I.G, is telling stories about the life that he saw growing up, and some of it is personal, like some of it he lived, but some of it, he has a whole song, Give Me the Loot, that's this imagined robbery, and he was not. Notorious B.I.G. was not really out there robbing pregnant mothers. Like he was. Yeah. This is a story that he's telling, and so I try to explain to them like, when you watch Goodfellas, like you don't think like, oh my God, Martin Scorsese is this horrible person. Like, well, how could he put this? I mean, some people do, but like, I think if you're a film lover, or like Quentin Tarantino, like it's violent, but there's like a point to it. Like this is art, and I think a lot of people are dismissive of that in hip hop, probably for racism reasons a lot of the time.
Yes,
but, like,
absolutely.
If you truly like listen to albums like this, it's like, to me, it's on the level of like Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction. Like they're violent. Are they misogynistic at times? Yes, but like so are those movies. It's putting you into this world and telling you this story, and I love it.
Yeah, incredible. And I wasn't aware, and I think that's because the glimpses that you're given of the genre of hip hop, rap, gangster rap, all of that was going on in the 90s, you're getting a peek into a music video. You're getting an MTV News cutaway story about a feud between Biggie and Tupac, and you're getting, and that's all you're getting fed. And if you don't take the time to explore the album, like I knew the song Big Papa, and I'm pretty sure I had heard the song Juicy before, so I knew the hits. And my roommate in college used to always walk in the house and go, "I love it when you call me Big Papa." He used to always say that, and so I was like, I know that's Biggie.
Sure.
And so I was familiar with it, but the real way to get into this album and many albums in this genre is to understand that there's a story, and that this is a play, this is a film.
Right, exactly.
And I don't think I knew that. And similar, another thing that I've never gotten into. Were you ever into wrestling, like professional wrestling, WWE, WWF?
I mean, when I was a kid, big time. I talk about all the time, like one of the traumatic events of my childhood was when my mom told me wrestling was not real. And I wrote a letter to the editor of the newspaper being like, because there was no internet to look it up. I was like, my mom's telling me wrestling's not real. I don't believe it. Can you fact check this for me? I never heard back.
Never heard back. They didn't want to break your spirit. Well, I was going to say, it was never a thing for me, but this is an example of another thing. I never got into wrestling. I knew kids that were crazy about it. And now, as we live in this time where everybody reflects and is nostalgic on their childhood, I see so many people I knew who grew up with it. And then it was explained to me at one point in time that it's like being into comic books. Right. When you're into wrestling, because there's characters, there's good guys, there's bad guys. You're going to watch them battle it out. There are stories at play about rivalries and who's getting, and I was like, oh, so like so many things, if you don't have the full kind of understanding of what the artist is trying to create here, you can be dismissive of it. And this album, sure. I have to believe that it had to have been a little bit, when I saw the song about suicide, I was like, that's even though he's telling a story, that had to have been something relatively vulnerable to be putting up there in 1994 for the hip hop genre, which was known for being tough, strong.
Yeah, no,
not talking about mental health. And I thought that had to have been kind of a whoa thing.
No, 100%. I mean, that's part of what made Biggie so special, is that, he did have like this bravado, but then he would kind of peel back the layers and have these emotional moments. Like, on this record, he talks about his, mom having breast cancer and like, this is why I'm stressed. And, he talks about, he's got these misogynistic lyrics, and then you find out in a song that the heart of it is he was, rejected by a woman and he's hurt and he's like expressing that pain. And then, the album ends with suicidal thoughts. And I mean, there were obviously some hip hop groups doing that, but singing songs like that, but most of the mainstream ones were not. And especially in 94 when, West Coast hip hop was kind of ruling the charts in the hip hop world, like, Snoop, as much as I love him, was not singing about like, vulnerable stuff and, depression and stuff. So it was very refreshing, at the time.
Yeah. Snoop was probably so much more well embraced by young teens in my area because it was party. It was good times. Right. It was feel good. Like when you heard Snoop Dogg, it was a guy, saying, "Hey, we're gonna get fucked up. We're gonna kick it." And I think that teenagers are like, "Hell yeah!" And I really now know that I've always had a little bit of a melancholy spirit. I think people who are, and I mean that as Smashing Pumpkins, but I was gonna say, people who are entertainers and are big personalities often have a lot of heartache and sadness and things that they really hide from people. And so I really connected with alternative and that genre because these guys were talking about how much they were hurting and how depressed they were and going through the anguish. And so I really wish I had known about this album even more so, because I think I would have found a lot of interesting connections in that level of vulnerability. And
no, for sure.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong on this. I tried to do a little research. I listened to it start to finish, and I did a little research, and this is his only studio album released before he died.
In his lifetime, yeah.
In his lifetime. This is the only thing. And I was like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable.
His second record, Life After Death, came out like a couple weeks after he died. So it was already done and everything, and it was, but he didn't get to see it become a huge success. But yeah, I mean, that blows my mind. It also blows my mind he was 21 years old when he made this record. Like
21.
The older I get, when I look back at like these amazing records that like, he's a little bit older than me. So when I was a kid, I was like, this is a grown adult man. Right. And now that I'm older, I'm looking back, it's like, no, he was a kid. 21. Like, and he made, a masterpiece and then made another one. I think both of his records are amazing.
When I read that too, I saw the thing about being 21, and you're so right. I think about me at 21,
right?
And I go, look, we've both done great things. We have, but I look back and I go, how much art and focus and drive did I have at 21 to really, really see through, a life-changing album? Not so much. I was still figuring out how to cure a hangover, and so it's just funny when you look back on a lot of these guys, and I think there is a phenomenon too, right? When you see them as older, they'll always seem older in your mind.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like I always do this. I always tell this as the example. On the Wonder Years, Kevin Arnold's older brother will always seem older than me, even though I look back on the episodes and I go, he's a child. But right. I go, I can't see him as anything other than an older brother, and he feels and looks older because that's how I perceived him when I was younger. So yeah, I think that's pretty fascinating. But what are some of the things that really connected for you about Ready to Die? You've said a ton of them, but I just want to give you full liberty to kind of say these things or that, whatever else that we haven't gotten into yet.
Sure. So I think, when I first listened to it, I think I knew Big Papa and I liked the song, and I maybe had heard Juicy, but I don't know if you know the story about how the album was recorded, but
I don't. I don't,
Okay,
and that's why I asked Patrick Hicks music stories on my show, because I knew he'd tell me a story. This is a story about what, Patrick? This is a story about what?
Oh, great question. This is a story about wrestling with yourself, or this is a story about two sides of yourself.
Yes.
Something with the dual nature of man.
I love
the
it.
man who contains multitudes. I'll have to think of it. So I'll try to do it pretty quick. So Notorious B.I.G. is discovered by this guy, Sean Combs, at the time known as Puff Daddy. And his demo tape makes its way to Puff Daddy through a contact at the Source magazine. And Puff is like blown away. So Puffy also has a great story. We got to get into that like a little bit. So Puffy was like this college student who threw parties. He's not really a musician. He was like more of a promoter and just like a insane businessman. And so while he's in college, he dropped out, I think his sophomore year, but he goes to Uptown Records, which is run by this guy, Andre Harrell. And he's like, let me intern at your company. And Andre Harrell like gives him a chance. And then he, from an intern, works his way up to be like the vice president of the company. And one of the ways he does that is Andre Harrell signs this singer named Mary J. Blige, who didn't really fit with the roster. Like, it was a hip hop label. And so they signed this R&B singer, but then she's also not what people thought of as R&B singers. Like, she was like from the ghetto. Like, she was like street and thug, and she was not Whitney Houston. She was not Mariah Carey. So they like didn't know what to do. So they connect her with Puffy, who's this young, like, I don't know if he was still an intern or if he wasn't, he was like just out of internship. And he's like a low level guy. And he was like, I know exactly what to do with her. She's going to sing R&B hooks over hip hop beats. And we're not going to try to change her image. We're going to like lean into it, and basically creates a whole new subgenre of like hip hop soul. And their album comes out, What's the 411, and is a huge success, like multi-platinum album. And it kind of makes Puffy's career. And then he works with like Jodeci and these other groups. So he's like this wonderkind. Now he wants to sign Biggie, and he's never worked with like just a rapper before. He's done like R&B acts, but he hears like the musicality in Biggie's rapping. It's like, it's not just, he doesn't sound like other rappers. Like, he has this quality that's almost like singing. Like, his raps are so catchy.
Yes.
And so he signs him to Uptown Records, and then they start working on the album. They start recording it, and Biggie's still new. He's done a couple singles, but he's nervous. He's kind of like, he has a little bit of a higher pitched voice, and the songs are like hardcore. And one of the songs that they record is the song Gimme the Loot, which is probably my favorite song on the record. It's like the third song on the record. Yeah. So this does kind of answer your question, because you're like, what first connected you? Yeah. It was this song. It's the third track on the record.
Give me the loot. Give me the loot.
And when I heard this song, it just blew me away. And it's basically telling the story of a robbery. But Biggie is playing two different characters. He's like kind of an older, wiser, more grounded criminal. And then he's also playing this like young, upstart, crazy. It's almost like Robert De Niro versus Joe Pesci.
Sure.
Telling the story in the same song. And he recorded, like, he went in the booth, recorded one part, left blanks, and then went back in and like recorded, he duetted with himself, which is just insane. And the story's so good. And it's just funny, and like, it's like a Quentin Tarantino movie or a Martin Scorsese movie, like I said. But there's just a line in there that's just harsh. That's like he's I'm even robbing pregnant women, and I'm stealing the number one mom pendant from around their neck. And then there's a line later where he's like, getting strangled for their earrings and bangles. Like, it's just super violent.
Right.
And Andre Harrell, who was like, older guy who's like more of the early 80s hip hop, was like, this is insane. You can't say this stuff on a record. This is too hardcore. But Biggie's like, this is real. This is kind of the stuff I saw out of my window in the neighborhood. Like, this is real stuff. And so there's this conflict. So Puff Daddy gets fired from Uptown. And there's like a lot to it. It's basically like, Puffy had this great metaphor where he's like, you had two kings in the castle, and it was Andre's castle, so I got thrown in the moat. So Puffy gets fired, and a week later he starts his own company, Bad Boy. But when he gets fired, he's the reason that Notorious B.I.G. is on the label. So when he gets fired, Notorious B.I.G.'s deal is like in limbo. He thinks it's over. Like, I missed my shot. My guy who was fighting for me is fired. So Biggie goes and leaves and goes back to selling drugs because he's like, well, I need money. I have a daughter. I don't know what else to do. I'm a young kid. So he goes back to selling drugs. And then a week later, Puff Daddy has to call him and be like, okay, I started my own company. Because he's been so successful, he gets like a distribution deal with a big label, Arista Records. And he's like, come back, like, stop selling drugs, come back into the studio.
Get off the streets. Come on. Yeah.
And when he comes back into the studio, he's kind of different. Like, his voice is deeper. He's just like, he grew up a lot in between these two sessions. And when they come back, Puffy's also like, we need some singles. Like, Gimme the Loot is not going on the radio. It's so weird. Like, I remember when I had the cassette tape, it's an explicit lyrics tape, but those lines are scrambled. Like, the strangled and the, like, the part about the number one mom pendant. Like, I mean,
really? So they deleted them or mixed them in there where you can't hear it, even though the tape itself says explicit.
Right. So, I mean, there's plenty of horrible stuff. I mean, there's literally like porno sounds on the record. But
I heard that.
The two lines, I don't care if you're pregnant, I'll steal the number one mom pendant, and the strangled for the earrings and bangles. Strangled and pregnant are like backwards masked. So it's like garbled when you hear it, which I can't think of another example of a record where it was like, this is explicit, but we're still bleeping this one part. Yeah. But so Puff is like, all right, that's not going on the radio. We need some singles. So when he comes back, he starts recording more commercial, radio-friendly stuff. So Juicy, Big Papa, One More Chance, these are all recorded in the second session. So when you hear the record, like, one of the reasons I think it's such a masterpiece is you have these two competing styles almost, whereas, like, I think with most artists, you would have recorded your first album and it would have been the hardcore, just gangsta stuff. And then maybe on your second album, they would have been like, all right, let's be more commercial. And that's when you'd have your big hit singles. And this one's kind of mashed together. So now you get this perfect balance of like hardcore stuff and then your poppier radio singles. And you have violent songs, love songs, like, these raw emotional songs. It's like everything is contained on this record, which is like part of the reason I love it so much. But so that's a really long way of answering the question. But when I first started giving the loot, I was just like, this guy is a genius. I understand why it was not the radio hit, and I'm like grateful for the radio hits on there. But that was the first song when I was listening to it where I was like, to paint this picture, tell this story, be funny. Like, some of his lines are just still make me laugh out loud. It's just like, I was like, this guy is a genius. He's special.
Man, that was great. You really got the assignment when I said the record. You nailed it, because to your point, I had always asked people the waterproof record that they had, and it had to do with what their choice was in life. And you really nailed it, because you thought long and hard. You were like, yeah, well, what caused me to pick up a guitar is very different than what caused me to want to tell stories. And so here today, you proved why this was the album that really opened that door, because you just told me an unbelievable story that is something that you need to know it in order to really digest Ready to Die.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
To look at the cover and see a baby on it, and hear how the tone shifts from song to song, and voice quality and vocal quality. And what an unbelievable thing that during the only studio album while he's alive that he gets to do this snapshot, this glimpse of a heightened version of his story. You know what I mean? It's his story, right, but it's also elements of fiction in there just to tell a good tale. But it really is something special. And I am going to encourage people who listen to the show, who listen because I do the artist that you're familiar with. If you too are like me and you don't know a lot about hip hop, I think this is a really cool album that you need to check out and experience and really see the story that's in there. So I am thrilled that we accidentally fell into a Patrick Hicks music story, just like you do on your videos. Have you done Ready to Die or Notorious B.I.G. in your TikToks yet?
No.
Okay.
I did do Mary J. Blige, so I talked a little bit about Puffy there. Puffy is just kind of needs his whole own...
Yeah.
I don't know, more than I can do in a short TikTok. And same with Biggie too. There's a lot of artists that like I haven't really touched because they're so big for me.
Yeah.
Like I haven't really, like if you don't know my work, I usually do like origin stories, like where did this band come from and how did they start, which is what I really like. And I haven't done them for some of my favorite bands like Nirvana, The Pumpkins,
Yeah.
or Biggie or Tupac. Or it's almost like, what if I mess that up? Like, you know what I mean? Like
I get it.
There's a lot of pressure to make those ones, stand out. But I mean, it's amazing with artists like, like you said, where this is the only album in his lifetime and it contains so much. There's some artists where it's just eerie almost, like that it's almost like they knew they were going to have a limited time and they were like, I'm getting it all out there. Like, I'm getting everything I wanted to. I mean, he tells the fact that he dies so young, he's 24 and his only albums are Ready to Die and Life After Death, which comes out after he died. I mean,
that is spooky.
Eerie stuff. Yeah.
Very spooky. Wow. That's unbelievable. Well, I'm excited to see when they finally do happen and you make them, because I'll be able to watch them and go, I knew all this for sure. But I understand about being intimidated about your biggest artists. I almost didn't release the Mayonnaise TikTok. And that's, I don't know if I ever told you that story, but I almost didn't do it. It just like what you said, that is the biggest band and the biggest song for me. So I made it. And then I immediately thought, is this like, did I do this wrong? Is this going to come across like I'm poking fun at something that is so meaningful to me? And so I really kind of obsessed. Yeah, I know. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I almost didn't put it out there. I'm glad I did. But it was one of those
one
things
of your best videos.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. And I think that that's interesting that when you have something that is really, really high up and you hold it on a high regard, it is harder because you go, I want to do it the best, most perfect way possible. And so that makes sense why some of these artists that you really, really admire, you're like, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm ready to touch it yet, I
know.
But incredible, dude. Incredible. What a story. Yeah. Is there any other, I was trying to think, I tried to do a little research before I came in, so I had some stats on it. Apparently he didn't want to do Juicy. Apparently that was a song he didn't want to do. So go ahead.
I mean, Juicy is a whole other story into itself. It's really fascinating. I mean, that's why I say Puff Daddy is such an interesting guy. I mean, he's such a smart businessman, but you can tell he's not a musician. So the origin of Juicy is that it's based on a sample of a song called Juicy Fruit by this artist Matume, and Puffy is the one that wanted to use it, and he just went to the producer and was like, this would be a good song to make, to sample. So the producer is like, okay, let me see, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to flip it? Like, and Puffy's kind of like, no, don't flip it. I just want him rapping over Juicy Fruit. And the producer's kind of like, well, that's not what hip-hop sampling is. That's what a lot of people's impression of hip-hop sampling is. And a lot of it is because, like, Juicy is one of the first songs where it's, like, literally just
song.
Him. Like, the sample is not transformed, which Matume was not too happy about. But that was kind of Puffy's vision. And if you listen to songs, like, that he did after, like, I'll Be Missing You, the Sting song, it's literally just him rapping over the Sting song.
Totally.
And, but that's because he was not a producer. He's the executive producer, and his voice is all over the album, but he was not, producer. Like DJ Premier and some of the other guys that were on this record. The art of sampling is actually transforming, and like you want people to not even know what you're sampling, to be like, ooh, where'd you get that cool drum break from? Like that's what DJs are really about. And Puffy, is like, no, we want to make hits, rap over Between the Sheets, rap over Juicy Fruit. So so Biggie's like, no. I mean, the producers didn't really want to do it. Biggie didn't really want to do it. But I mean, that song is still, at least in Chicago, that song's on the radio all the time to this day. So you gotta kind of give him credit for he had the ear for the hits. But it is, I like the fact that it's on there because it's surrounded by this other harder stuff. So I do like the song, and I mean the lyrics are timeless. Yeah.
But he had to pay.
It could be a whole other thing.
Yeah. He had to pay a ton in royalties. I think it was like, I thought I saw it was like $2.8 million had to be paid just for the royalties on this album because of all the samplings and stuff that people were like, hey.
They also got in trouble for not clearing a lot of the samples on here. And this is still, I mean, it's 94, so it's like golden age of hip hop, but it's still early in the sampling game, like relatively. So the lawsuits that kind of established the procedures for sampling were fresh. So those producers, I mean, these are old school 80s producers that are making this record. They're still kind of the mind of like, if it's transformed enough and if it's just this little amount of it, like we're not crediting people or paying people for that. And they learned the hard way that no, this in the new world of copyright infringement lawsuits, you could take 1 second of a song and you got to pay for it. So
yeah, and then it started to change after that, right? It was early. But I was gonna say that's pretty much the show, man. I know you got stuff to do.
Love it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and actually that went even better than I thought. I mean, am I even surprised? We get along so well, and I'm sure this is the first of tons of videos that we'll be making together over the years. But I was gonna say, coming into this, I didn't know what to expect because usually if I have a guest on and we're talking about an album, I'm like, oh, I know it so well. This is like the first time that I've had somebody on, and I listened to it beforehand, and I was like, now I need to listen to it again. And I learned so much. You educated me. You Patrick Hicked me. So it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome.
Good.
Is there anything we can shout out? Let's make sure we tell them where to follow you. Not only do we say TikTok, which is Patrick Hicks 82, but if you search Patrick Hicks, you'll find him. He's at the top. But you're also on Instagram, and that's
I do post on Instagram and YouTube if people are not about TikTok. My dad, when he tells people to watch my videos, he's like, you just go in, search him on the Google. You'll find him.
You'll find him. Just type in Patrick Hicks. That's true. I mean, hey, I got to give credit to TikTok at least for making it where if you type Jacob Givens into Google now, I am the first result, and I would imagine you're the first Patrick Hicks. And it's before TikTok, that was not the case. So I'm very thankful.
Whatever happened with the Jacob Givens who didn't have the?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what that asshole is sitting on my handle for no reason, but I own, not that I do anything with him. Right? It killed him. It crushed him. He just was like, I'll never live up. I have jacobgivens.com, which I've owned for, I don't know, like 15 years. I just don't do anything with it, but I've sat on it and I've been like, one day. But and also in all the emails when, I'm old enough that I was the first Jacob Givens to get so many email addresses. And I've had other Jacob Givenses reach out to me and be like, man, you have all the.
I have Patrick Hicks at Gmail, and I just get so much stuff that's not intended for me.
Yeah. Oh man, we just outed our emails on here. Should I bleep that part out? This is going to go out to hundreds of thousands of people.
My email is in my profile, so. Please, if you have business inquiries, please email me at patrickhicks@gmail.com.
You might be getting a lot of emails. And by the way, I meant hundreds to thousands, not hundreds of thousands. I'm not that big of a show yet.
I was like, dang, I didn't realize.
You're like, yeah, this is listened to by millions. No, it does good. I mean, look, there's a good audience, and I'm grateful for every single one of you. So thank you for doing it. But thank you again for joining me, Patrick.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. It was so good to have you on here, and it was amazing, and I learned so much. And I will talk to you soon. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience up here. So you're welcome to sit through it, or you can sign off, whatever you'd like to do.
I'm going to sit through it. I want to hear it.
All right. All right. Thank you guys again for joining me for another episode of Waterproof Records. What a thrilling time it was to have my good friend Patrick Hicks on here. I just loved learning so much about it, and I honestly do hope that if you're just a metalhead, a rock head, and you haven't put that hip hop hat on, now's the time. Once again, shout out to DistroKid, my sponsor. Make sure to check out that link, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. And you can get 30% off for your first year. And thank you guys again. Remember, I can't do this show without you. So go in and comment and give me the ratings. And if you hate the show, feel free to say it. That's fine. Press is good press. All press is good press. But share it, tell it to friends, and let them know about the show so that I can keep growing this and we can keep making more and more shows together. And who knows, now that me and Patrick are doing super collaborations like this, maybe there'll be like a special super podcast coming your way at some point in time with the three of us. So thank you again, everybody. This has been Waterproof Records. We'll see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna